Page 19. Raising my binoculars to my eyes just in time to see a huge disc rise from beneath the ocean. Water streaming from the air around it tumbled lazily on its axis and disappeared into the clouds. My heart beat wildly. I tried to talk but couldn't. Then I changed my mind and decided I didn't want to say that anyway. I had seen a flying saucer the size of an aircraft carrier come right out of the ocean and fly into the clouds. I looked around quickly to see if anyone else had seen it. Ensign Ball was still bending over the IMC. He was ordering coffee. Geronimo was looking down the starboard side aft. I was torn between my duty to report what I had seen and the knowledge that if I didn't, no one would believe me. As I looked out over the ocean, I saw only sky, clouds, and water. It was as if nothing had happened. I almost thought that I had dreamed it. Ensign Ball straightened, turned toward Geronimo, and said the coffee was on the way up. I looked back toward the spot about 15 degrees relative off the port bow and about 2.5 nautical miles distant. Nothing, not even a hint of what happened. Ensign Ball, I said, I thought I saw something about 15 degrees relative off the bow, but I lost it. Can you help me to look over that area? Ensign Ball turned, raising his glasses to eye level. I didn't know at the time, but Geronimo had heard me and turned to look. He was happy that something had broken the monotony. I was just lifting the binoculars off my chest when I saw it. The giant saucer shape plunged out of the clouds, tumbled and pushing the water before it opened up a hole in the ocean and disappeared from view. It was incredible. This time I had seen it with my naked eyes, and its size in comparison with the total view was nothing short of astounding. Ensign Hall stood in shock, his binoculars in his hand, mouth open. Geronimo yelled, "Holy shit, what the hey? Do you guys see that?" Ensign Ball turned and looking right at me with the most incredulous look on his face, said in a low voice, "This had to happen on my watch." He turned quickly, pressing the override on the IMC, and yelled, "Captain, to the bridge! Captain, to the bridge!" As an afterthought, he pressed the switch again and yelled, "Somebody get a camera up there." The captain surged up the ladder with the quartermaster on his heels. Chief Quartermaster Quintero had the ship's 35mm camera slung around his neck. The captain stood patiently while Ensign Ball tried to describe what he'd seen. He glanced at us and we both nodded in affirmation. That was enough for the captain. He called sonar, who during the excitement had reported contact underwater at the same bearing. The captain announced into the IMC, "This is the captain. I have the con." The reply came back instantly from the helm. Hey, sir." I knew that the helmsman was passing the word in the control room that the captain had personally taken control of the boat. I also knew that the rumors were probably flying through the vessel. The captain called down and ordered someone to closely monitor the radar. His command was instantly acknowledged. As the five of us stood gazing out over the sea, the same ship, or one exactly like it, rose slowly, turned in the air, tilted at an angle, and then vanished. I saw the chief snapping pictures out of the corner of my eye. This time, I had 3 images from which to draw conclusions. It was a metal machine, of that there was no doubt whatsoever. It was intelligently controlled, of that I was equally sure. It was a dull color, kind of like pewter. There were no lights. There was no glow. I thought I had seen a row of what looked like portholes, but I could not be certain. Radar reported contact at the same bearing and gave us a range of 3 nautical miles. The range was right on. As the craft had moved toward the general direction that we were headed, we watched repeatedly as the strange craft re-entered the water and then subsequently rose into the clouds over and over again until finally we knew that it was gone for good. The episode lasted about 10 minutes. Before leaving the bridge, the captain took the camera from the chief and instructed each of us not to talk to anyone about what we had seen. He told us the incident was classified and we were not to discuss it, not even amongst ourselves. We acknowledged his order. The captain and the chief left the bridge. Ensign Ball stepped to the 1MC and pressing the override switch announced, "This is Ensign Ball. The captain has left the bridge and I have some con." The reply, "AA, sir," quickly followed. Those of us who had witnessed the UFO were not allowed to go ashore after we had berthed in peril. Even those of us who didn't have the duty were told we had to stay aboard. After about 2 hours, a commander from the Office of Naval Intelligence boarded. He went directly to the captain's stateroom. It wasn't long before we were called to wait in the passageway outside of the captain's door. Ensign Ball was called first. After about 10 minutes, he came out and went into the wardroom. He looked shaken. I was next. When I entered the stateroom, the commander was holding my service record in his hand. He wanted to know why I had gone from the Air Force into the Navy. I told him the whole story and he laughed when I said that after putting off the Navy for fear of chronic seasickness, I hadn't been seasick yet. Suddenly a mask dropped over his face and looking at me directly in the eyes, he asked, "What did you see out there?" "I believe it was a flying saucer," I answered. The man began to visibly shake and he screamed obscenities at me. He threatened to put me in the brig for the rest of my life. I thought he wasn't going to stop yelling, but as suddenly as he began, he stopped. I was confused. I had answered his question truthfully, yet I was threatened with prison. I was not afraid, but I was not very confident either. I figured I had better take another tack. 18 years with my father and 4 years in the Air Force had taught me something. Number one was that officers just do not lose control like that ever. Number two was that if my answer had elicited that explosion, then the next thing out of my mouth had better been something entirely different. Number three was that his response had been an act of kindness to get me to arrive at exactly that conclusion. "Let's start all over again," he said. "What did you see out there?" "Nothing, sir," I answered. "I didn't see a damn thing, and I'd like to get out of here just as soon as possible." A smile spread over his face, and the captain looked relieved. "Are you sure, Cooper?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I replied. "I'm sure." "You're a good sailor, Cooper," he said. "The Navy needs more men like you. The Navy needs more men like you. You'll go far with the Navy." He then asked me to read several pieces of paper that all said the same thing, only with different words. I read that if I ever talked about what it was that I didn't see, I could be fined up to $10,000 and imprisoned for up to 10 years or both. In addition, I could lose all pay and allowances due or ever to become due. He asked me to sign a piece of paper stating that I understood the laws and regulations that I had just read governing the safeguard of classified information relating to the national security. By signing, I agreed never to communicate in any manner any information regarding the incident with anyone. I was dismissed, and boy, I was glad to get out of there. Not long after that incident, I devolunteered from submarines. I was transferred to the USS Toonbigby. AOG-11. The Toombigbee was a gasoline tanker. It was more dangerous than the sub. The captain was crazy and the crew was a combination of idiots and misfits. I once had to draw my pistol while I was petty officer of the watch to prevent an officer from being attacked by a seaman. The Toombigbee collided in the dead of the night with a destroyer in the Malachi Channel, and several men died when the destroyer was almost cut in half. Every day aboard that ship was exactly like a scene right out of Mr. Roberts. I struck for quartermaster, navigation specialist, and managed to advance to the rank of second-class petty officer despite the obvious obstacles. I made 2 Westpac tours aboard the Toombigbee. They included a total of 12 months off the coast of Vietnam. We were under machine gun fire while anchored off Chu Lai. We had to do an emergency breakaway and leave the harbor. All we needed was one tracer round in one of the tanks, and kaboom, it would have been all over. The Viet Cong gunner probably got busted because the stupid jerk missed the whole damn ship. How can you miss a whole ship? The only other time I felt threatened was when we went up to a small outpost at the DM2 called Viet, Vietnam. Viet. It was a vision right out of hell. Viet sat on the southern bank at the river mouth of the Thach Han River. We rode at anchor and pumped fuel ashore through a bottom ley line. Every night we could see the tracers from firefights raging up and down the river along the DMZ. It was a real hot spot. Every once in a while, Viet Cong or NVA rockets would slam into the camp. We would perform an emergency breakaway and put to sea until all clear was sounded. Everything was cool until our wacko captain decided we were going into the river mouth. Did you ever try to put a pencil through the eye of a needle? That's about comparable to what we did. I'll never know how we got that big ship through the narrow mouth of that river with no navigational references whatsoever. We dropped anchor mid-channel, and the captain backed the ship right up to the beach and dropped the stern anchor into the sand. There we sat, a great big target full of gasoline. We were helpless in the mouth of a narrow river, and with 3 anchors out right in the middle of one of the hottest combat zones in Vietnam. That night, several men in the crew wrote letters to the Chief of Naval Operations requesting an immediate transfer. No one slept. I don't know why the enemy didn't send in the rockets, but they didn't. I knew then that God must keep a special watch over fools. The next day we set to sea and started for Pearl Harbor. The captain was relieved for incompetence. Later that year, then I was transferred to school. I didn't know what school I had drawn. It turned out to be the Naval Security and Intelligence School for Internal Security Specialist, NEC 9545. The general training prepared me to set up security perimeters, secure installations and buildings, and safeguard classified information. My training included special weapons, booby trap identification, and disarming, the detection of bugs, phone taps, transmitters, and many other objects. I was specifically trained to prepare and conduct Pacific Area intelligence briefings. From the day I reported to school in 1968 until I left the Navy, I worked off and on for naval security and intelligence. Upon graduating, I was transferred to Vietnam. I had volunteered over a year before because I figured that my chances were better in the war than they were on that screwed up gasoline tanker. This was the first good news I'd had since leaving boot camp. I really wanted to fight for my country. I wasn't to find out what a real fool I was until a few years later. I landed at Da Nang and was bused to Camp Carter, the headquarters for Naval Security and Intelligence in one corps or first corps. I was interviewed by Captain Carter, the commanding officer. The names turned out to be a coincidence. Captain Carter asked me if I thought I would make a good patrol boat captain, and I told him that I would. What else could I tell him? I thought he was joking when he told me I would have command of a boat and crew. He wasn't. I did. Lieutenant Dewey at Harbor Patrol, a division of Naval Intelligence, allowed me to handpick a crew. He gave me first choice of four 45-foot picket boats that had just been unloaded from the deck of a freighter, and I and my new crew spent 3 days going over every inch of that boat. We adjusted and fine-tuned everything. We sanded and painted. One of the seamen even hung curtains in the after cabin. We checked and double-checked the engines. My gunners, mate GMG-3 Robert G. Barron, checked out weapons, and we began to arm our vessel. I've got to tell you the truth. Just looking at all those guns scared the shit out of me. I vowed right then and there that I would be the best damn captain that ever commanded a combat vessel in wartime. I learned to exist and only 2 or 3 hours of sleep out of 24, and never ate until I knew that my crew had been fed. We spent a lot of spooky nights patrolling the Da Nang Harbor and river. One night a rocket hit the ammo dump at the river's edge near the Da Nang Bridge, and it really looked as if the world was coming to an end. Another time we engaged the enemy in the cove at Point Isabella near the marine fuel farm and probably saved their butts. That engagement was reported in the Stars and Stripes, the Armed Forces newspaper in Vietnam. The worst moments came, however, not from Charlie but from Mother Nature. A full-blown typhoon roared across the Gulf of Tonkin to save the boats we put to sea. The angels must have been laughing. What a sight we must have made. I maneuvered our boat in between 2 giant cargo ships riding at anchor off Red Beach, and learned quickly what fear was really all about. The wind was blowing so hard that none of us could go on deck. That meant that 2 of us in the pilot house were stuck on watch, and the men trapped in the after cabin had to man the hand pumps. The windows in the pilot house blew out, and the rain felt like knives hitting our skin. Water poured in, and I prayed that the men on the pumps would not become exhausted. I could barely make out the 2 tankers. I could tell that they were in more trouble than we. When we were on the crest of the mountains waves, we looked down onto the top of the ships. When we were in the trough, we seemed to be in danger of their crashings down upon us. One of the freighters snapped a cable and steamed slowly out of the harbor. The next morning the storm calmed, and we moved into the river. Debris was floating down, and we had to play dodge the tree trunks until we spotted a sheltered pier in front of the press club. We carefully pulled the boat alongside, tied fast to the pier, then collapsed from exhaustion. After a while, we drew straws to see who would remain on watch with me. The rest went into the press club. After a couple of hours, the crew returned, and we went in. It was like nothing was going on outside. Reporters sat around drinking or eating. All around flowed conversation and laughter. We ordered a huge meal, signed Lieutenant Dewey's name to the check, and then we went out to the boat. I don't know whose name the other guys signed, but none of us had any money. I don't even know if Lieutenant Dewey ever got the bill. I do know that it was one of the best damn meals that we ever had in that country. The next 2 days were spent in repairing the boat, cleaning the weapons, and checking everything. Then we went to the club, got stoned, drunk, and slept for damn near a whole other day. Bob Barron volunteered for Cool Viet. I begged him to stay with us. Maybe we could all go up later together. He couldn't wait. He had to have action. We promised each other that if one of us bought the farm, the other would drink a bottle of scotch in memory, then break the bottle on the rocks. Don't ask me what that was all about. Men who think they might die at any given moment do stupid things, and I was no different than most. About 3 weeks later, we learned that Bob's boat had gone on to Lima patrol on the Thak Hang River one night and had never returned. No radio transmissions were ever heard, and for a while no bodies were found. Then one by one they popped up to the surface along the bank. It was a long time before we ever found the boat. When we did, it was twisted up like a pretzel. I say we because after I drank the bottle of scotch and broke it on the rocks, I forced the issue and was transferred to the Dong Ha River support group at Cu Viet. It was now a personal war. They had killed part of me. Bob had been my friend. His name is on the Vietnam Memorial. My boat engaged the enemy more times than any other boat that ever patrolled that river. We kept the enemy off the river, and I never lost another man. I was awarded the Naval Achievement Medal with Combat 5, the Naval Commendation Medal with Combat 5, and the Combat Action Ribbon. Our whole organization was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, the Naval Unit Citation, and each of us accumulated various other minor awards, ribbons, and medals. That's a picture of him on a boat. One thing I didn't like about Vietnam was that it was very difficult to maintain unit cohesion and morale when you had proven and trusted men leaving all the time at staggered intervals and green, unproven men arriving to take their place. I noticed that I felt like I was deserting my crew when I was rotated home. I tried to extend my tour of duty, but they had already decided to phase out our forces and turn the war over to the Vietnamese. If I had extended a month earlier, I was told I could have stayed. My attitude at that point was smothering. Screw it. The whole time that I was in Vietnam, and especially on the DMZ, had noticed that there was a lot of UFO activity. We had individual 24-hour crypto code sheets that we used to encode messages, but because of danger that one of them could be captured at any time, we used special code words for sensitive information. UFOs, I was told, was definitely sensitive information. I learned exactly how sensitive when all the people of an entire village disappeared after UFOs were seen hovering above their huts. I learned that both sides had fired upon the UFOs and they had blasted back with a mysterious blue light. Rumors floated around that UFOs had kidnapped and mutilated 2 Army soldiers, then dropped them in the bush. No one knew how much of this was true, but the fact that rumors persisted made me tend to think there was at least some truth in them. I found out later that most of those rumors were true. I eventually found myself back in Hawaii. This time it was shore duty at the headquarters of the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet at Makalapa, a hill above Pearl Harbor. I had carried a secret security clearance in the Air Force, and secret was required for submarines. When I checked into the Fleet Administration Unit, I was asked to fill out papers for another clearance. I did as I was asked. I remember that one of the questions asked if I had ever belonged to any fraternal organizations. I looked down at the list, circled the Demolay Society, and answered in the affirmative. I was assigned to the Operational Status Report Office, OPSTAT, OPSTAT, under Lieutenant CDR Mercado. While I awaited the results of my FBI background check for the upgraded clearance, about 6 months later, I was called into the office of the Chief of Staff for Naval Intelligence. I was asked to read the regulations covering the personnel reliability program governing those personnel who had access to nuclear weapons, information on nuclear weapons, launch codes, and various other things having to do with nuclear weapons or anything that came under HQCR 44. I was asked to read then sign a security oath, which I did. I was then told by Captain Caldwell that my security clearance had been upgraded to top secret. Q, sensitive compartmentalized information with access authorized on a strict to no basis. He told me to report to the officer in charge of the CINCPA-CFLT intelligence briefing team the following morning at 0400 hours. I did. Okay, I'm just going to stop there. We're stopping at page 27. Above here's a picture. William Cooper is presented with the Naval Commendation Medal with Combat V CINCPA CFLT headquarters in 1970. So I want to stop here on page 27, and I'll pick up on that page during our next reading, probably later on or tomorrow. Peace and blessings.